some great tidbits to think on about great, moments in Black history, as well as some very funny moments. Your humor is very funny. But Black history is American history. It's important to celebrate the accomplishments and revisit the sometimes dark and even sad moments of the past, because I believe that if you forget your past, you will repeat it. And you will not take the value of the lessons that were learned in those experiences. Today, I'd like to briefly discuss how Black history and AARP are connected in our past and how we're connected today. Dr. Ethel Percy Andrus, a retired high school principal, is the esteemed founder of AARP. She cared about people, she cared and was concerned about her fellow coworkers. And Dr. Andrus founded a separate organization called the National Retired Teachers Association in 1947. So let's look at what was going on in Black history in 1947 in that time period. Life in the 40s was very different than the life we enjoy today. Jim Crow was alive and well. Yes. Many of you may have lived it, or your parents experienced the pain of Jim Crow. My father told me, he's 80 years old, he told me what it was like working with his father on the railroad, riding from Minnesota to Washington State, and how their quarters and the way they were treated, the way my grandfather was treated, was just almost inhumane. And the amount of, and Jim Crow was very much alive even in the North. It was well and well alive in the South. But that meant that blacks and whites lived very different lives. The civil rights movement would not reach its peak until later in the 60s, but opportunities for African Americans for the advancement in their education and employment were far limited than those of whites. So, and in 1946, Mahalia Jackson, I love music, she recorded Move On Up a Little Higher that sold more than 8 million copies. So think about it. In 1946, we needed to move on up a little higher. And that song is still relevant today, but I found that interesting in 1946 that she recorded that. So back to Dr. Andrews. She realized that her fellow retired teachers were living on incredibly small pensions, often many without any health insurance. She approached over 30 companies to try to get them to offer health insurance to retired teachers. I'm a teacher's. My dad was a math teacher. Any other teachers' children or teachers in the room? Okay. But she found someone willing to take a chance on her organization called the NRTA members in 1956. Now let's fast forward to the 1950s. It may not have been apparent to many people in the time, but the American society of the 1950s was less stable than it appeared after the Depression, World War II, and the growth and the prosperity of the post-war period that had brought a lot of fundamental changes to the American life. That theme that ran through the times at that time was that America was growing and changing more quickly than some of its citizens could comprehend or want to go along with. For example, in May 17, 1954, the U.S. Supreme Court handed down its decision on Brown versus Board of Education in Topeka, Kansas. In December 1st, 1955, Rosa Parks, mother of the civil rights movement, refused to give up her seat in a public bus to make room, for a white passenger. And in 1958, Dr. Ethel Percy Andrus, a retired high school principal, founded AARP. AARP evolved from the initial organization, the NRTA, where she had established to promote her philosophy of productive aging in response to the need of retired teachers for health insurance. So let's go to 1960s. What was the landscape of the 1960s? Okay, the civil rights movement promoted civil disobedience, and this movement received an infusion of energy from a student sit-in at the Woolworth store in Greensboro, North Carolina on February 1st, 1960, also known as the Greensboro Four. from North Carolina A&T, an all-black college, where these young men sat down at a segregated lunch counter to protest Woolworth's policy of excluding African Americans. Third, also, even though it was ratified in 1870, the 15th Amendment would not be realized for almost a century. So in 1965, the Voting Rights Act was passed, that allowing a majority of African Americans in the South who were registered to vote to be able to vote and not have to suffer through poll taxes or literary tests and other means that had been used to disenfranchise African Americans. Also, in 1965, LBJ signed into law to create Medicare. And that was a program that is created to provide health care benefits for persons over the age of 65. So at that time, private health insurance was just virtually unavailable to older Americans. And 1965, Medicare put it in place for all people, but a woman named Ethel Percy Andress was trying to do that on her own to try to help other people. And lastly, in the 60s, that I felt was of notice, Thurgood Marshall was appointed to the United States Supreme Court by Lyndon B. Johnson. So, back to Dr. Andress. She approached dozens of insurance companies until she found someone who was willing to take the risk to insure older persons. And she also not only developed discount mail order pharmacy services and other products. So over the years, Dr. Andress realized that the time had come to create an organization open to all Americans. And AARP has tried over the last 53, 54 years to accomplish and to continue her goal. We've developed networks and coalitions throughout the aging community promoting the well-being of older persons through advocacy, education, and service. Our founding principles to promote independence, dignity, and purpose for older persons, to enhance the quality of life for older persons, and my favorite, to encourage older people to serve and not to be served. AARP works with you to protect your rights, your quality of life for the 50 plus now and for the future 50 plus. Because we are trying to do what is right by people to ensure that your rights are protected. And how are we doing that? We're working hard to protect Medicare and Social Security. We talked about how in 1965 that program was initiated and how Dr. Andress saw that there was a need for support and health care insurance for older persons. But at this time in 2013, there are others that feel differently, that feel that that is not a program that's relevant or needed now. But I feel, I don't know how you feel, but I feel that that's not true, that that's needed even more so, that you can have the quality of life that you are entitled to as an American, as an African American, as a man, and as a woman. In my work with AARP, my objective is to help people realize that through volunteerism and having an idea, like an Ethel Percy Andress had an idea, that we can really make a difference in our community. That if we can resolve some of the problems that we face in our community, and by working together, we realize that regardless of our ethnic backgrounds, aging is the common denominator that we will all share. Even if you're purple and you continue to live, you are going to age. And when we think back to the civil rights movement and the abolitionist movement, people of all races and types and walks of life worked together to try to resolve some really bad problems. Would you agree? Yes. And without their help, whether they looked like us or not, we were able to try to move past some of those really difficult and dark times. AARP is an advocate. We're trying to work through some of those difficult times through protecting and providing information about fraud prevention. We provide food drives, toy drives, workshops to teach you how to age in place. Age in place meaning to how to continue living in your home and not have to move to a nursing home if you do not want to do so, and how your family can be educated on how to care for you properly. Then we have computer classes. We even have classes to teach you how to work these smartphones. They're not very smart, if you ask me. Sometimes they're rather dumb because they call people when I don't want them to be called. But we have these type of resources to help you to continue to enjoy life and stay connected with your family and your friends, because I know all of you are busy, so I'm going to hurry up and finish. One example that I would be remiss to not bring forward, we believe that the Affordable Care Act that was implemented by our president is vital to not only the 50 plus now, but to the generations beyond that. And I also am from the opinion that just like when Lyndon Baines Johnson established Medicare and the Great Society programs, we are benefiting from those programs 50 years later and will continue to. I also believe that the Affordable Care Act will also, they will see the value of it 50 years from now. But we hope that people come into the understanding, and AARP is working very hard for folks to understand that. In your bags, there's some information about the Affordable Care Act, and if you ever want additional information, please, while you're here today, talk to one of our volunteers. They'd be more than happy to help you. We even have Reginald Hamilton. He's a skilled Affordable Care Act presenter who would be happy to come to your organization or your group to present on the Affordable Care Act. The song that we sang earlier says, "We shall overcome. We shall walk hand in hand." The legacy of service that others and individuals have shaped in our country not only shaped Black history, but shaped the America that we live in right now. And they did it at various ages. They were different shapes of folks. For example, JFK, he was 46 years old at the time of his assassination, but he also laid the groundwork for the positive changes to the lives of African Americans, the poor, and those who needed support. At age 57, Sojourner Truth gave her "Ain't I a Woman" speech, because they say you know you're a woman when you get 50. MLK was 39 years old when he died, but some say that his wisdom was far beyond his chronological age. The efforts of his hands, his intellect, and his ability to inspire others continue to live on today. Harriet Tubman, I just learned that she was short, but at 76 years old, after freeing hundreds of slaves, serving in the Civil War, Harriet Tubman was a delegate to the National Association of Colored Women's first annual convention. She believed the right to vote was vital to preserving our freedom. Dr. Andrews was 74 years old when she organized AARP. And it is my hope that today, together, at every age, that we will continue to make history, continue to make Black history, continue to make American history, and continue the legacy of lifting others as we climb. Thank you for your attention.